Hi, Mark and Grace here, and we're going to answer a question today for you. It's from a gal, and she says her husband was a Bible-believing Christian, committed his life to following Jesus and teaching God's Word. And around 6 years ago, while he was an elder in the church, they were both attending for 13 years, his faith unraveled, and he consequently became depressed and made some poor choices. So the church was failing, and ended up leaving that church and moving to a new house and a new town. So they started a new church and basically ended up having the same issues. She's asking, my husband has no desire to get involved with church again. So how do we answer the question of a husband who's disinterested after some church hurt that obviously happened in their family, and they're uprooted in a newer community and don't really have people to go to talk? They have 2 boys, and she feels like her boys are missing out on her husband's impact and teaching, and she's worried about him never returning to church. So
I think that sadly is not
uncommon.
60% of church attenders are female. There's between 11 and 13 million more women than men who attend church. Of course, some of those ladies are single, but a lot of those ladies are married, and they're attending church without their husband. And pastoring a local church, we also see women who will attend regularly, and their husbands are very infrequent. And so even if they are involved, sometimes their involvement is far less. And so for me, my heart is really for men, as I know your heart is for women. And here at the Trinity Church in Scottsdale, our biggest ministry is men's ministry. And if anything, the majority of our attenders are male. And my thought is if you can get young men to walk with Jesus, and then they get married to walk with Jesus with their wife, and then they have kids to walk with Jesus with their wife and kids, you're off to a really good start. This is a complex situation. And my concern, as I'm sure is yours, is both for the man, but also his wife and the future of his marriage. If spiritually he's not doing well, they're not praying together, he's not in God's word, he's not surrounding himself with good men, that means that he's not going to be as healthy as he could or should be. That means that the well-being of the marriage is not going to be what it could or should be. And that means that the kids are not getting the best version of their dad. And their dad may still love them and be invested and involved, but they're not going to get the best version of their dad. And so I would give it to you first, baby, and then I'll pick it up. What can the wife do, and what should the wife not do under these circumstances? Sounds like her husband is a believer, but he's stuck, maybe a little discouraged and moving backward to some degree.
Yeah, and if they were in ministry, it's extra hard when you're pulling back altogether. So you were leading and now
Heavily
not even
invested,
going to church.
involved.
Yeah. So I would encourage the wife to obviously pray and ask the Lord to intervene and soften his heart. I would encourage you to be a safe place, not a critical place, for your husband to come and talk through his pain and his struggles. And I realize you probably have your own pain that you're trying to work through and process. We would encourage biblical counseling, or maybe another older couple that you trust and knows the Lord and walks with the Lord, that you could confide in together as a couple and individually as needed, that you both agree on. I would really encourage you to not push the conversation toward healing, but to allow the Lord to allow that conversation to happen as your husband's ready to talk through it. He seems hurt. He seems like, the church hurt him, or whatever happened in ministry hurt him. And the problem is, when we don't have, you said he was a Bible-believing Christian. When we believe the Bible, we're studying right now in 1 Peter, where Jesus is that cornerstone. And when that cornerstone falls out for some reason, or we don't leave that cornerstone in place when we're facing a trial, then the whole thing comes falling down. And so finding a way to encourage him that it wasn't Jesus that hurt him, that it wasn't God that hurt him. And sometimes God's people do hurt each other, unfortunately, but we have an opportunity to respond by working it through and forgiving whoever did harm to us, not letting bitterness set in as a bitter root. And so as a wife, anything you can do to encourage him, encourage his gifts without nagging him, encourage him toward healing for your marriage first, because like Mark said, that's really the most important thing here is your relationship with the Lord and your relationship in your marriage. And then that will filter out to your boys and people around you in potential ministry if he chooses to do that again. But as a wife, it's really important to be tender during this time, even if he's even hard-hearted, but to be tender and show him and remind him what it looks like to let Jesus heal those wounds in your life.
But I would say, and I agree, and I would say for you, even if he doesn't want to go to church, do the things that he probably knows he should be doing, but maybe because of hurt or disappointment or frustration, he's gotten into a bad routine or rut that can be resolved.
You can still go.
You could still go, bring the kids, and I would also ask him, honey, is it okay if I bring you prayer requests for me, for the boys, and could you be praying with me, be praying for me, be praying with them, be praying for them? My guess is he's going to say yes, and that is inviting him into a spiritual relationship and conversation, not pushing him into something that maybe he might resist. The other thing is if you've been involved in church leadership, oftentimes there is church hurt that comes. Everybody who's involved in church will have some measure of church hurt. Church is a family. Every family has some pains and problems, and church family is no different. But sometimes if you're in leadership, sometimes that church hurt can be even deeper, and I think this is pretty crisis. And as a leader's family, you're not allowed to talk about it because that would be gossip and divisive. You're not allowed to fight back because that would be, unloving. And so sometimes the leader's family endures a lot. And so for those that hear this, and this is your story, I would ask, who is the pastor that the man would trust to talk to process with, to forgive, to heal, and to become the healthiest version of himself for his relationship with Jesus, his wife, his kids. And I'll just close with this. For this woman, for some reason, I can't offer this to everybody, but if your husband would be willing to talk to me, if you will send me an email to hello@realfaith.com. I love pastors. We love ministry leaders and their families. We can't help all of them, but we help as many as we can. And it sounds like he had some problems in church leadership, and it's kind of put him maybe in a defensive place. And I would love to, if possible, be of some help to him. So if you'll send me an email, but I'd talk to him first. Don't drop, hey, Mark's calling you into the principal's office. We're not doing that. Say, you know what, Mark would be willing to give you a call and talk to you and pray with you and maybe from a man's perspective be of some help to you. If he would be open to that without me imposing, but him inviting, I'd get on the phone with him and I'd do what I can to help because I love you and I love your sons and I love the church. And sometimes the church causes some pains and problems for leaders. But there's a way to heal from that and move forward, and we'd love to be a part of that if at all possible.
And be praying against the enemy's attack on your family, because he isn't just wanting you out of church, he wants to divide your whole family and your legacy of your boys, and I can see your concern for that. And so be praying against the enemy's attacks and his devices against you, and if your husband is was an effective communicator, the enemy wants to keep him out of the pulpit. So be praying against the enemy and for God's plan and what you can do to participate. And he will show you those ways. The Lord will show you how you can minister to your husband. If he experienced rejection, the last thing he needs is that from his wife. So any ways that you can encourage him in those ways as well. But yeah, if we can help out, that's great.
If you got a question, send it into hello@realfaith.com and we'll do our best to help.